Gwendolyn is asking, any tips for weaning off diuretics? Scroll down just a little bit. Not taken for blood pressure. Ultimately, I can't give you medical advice, but what I can tell you is, look, have a conversation with your prescribing doctor. Typically, the way diuretics are weaned is just that you don't just quit them cold turkey, but you titrate. So work with your doctor to figure out what dose they want you to titrate down. But it's not a you're taking them for years and then all of a sudden cold turkey you stop. That'll create a lot of fluid swelling and fluid issues for you, so that would probably be a bad idea. So again, work with that doctor to wean it down. Let's see. Shanquilla wants to know, is there spinach in my B Complete B vitamin product, and should I avoid if sensitive on food sensitivity testing? No, there's no spinach in my B Complete. We do have a spinach extract in our what's called 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, which is a form of methylated folate, but there's no spinach in that B Complete. What do you recommend as a substitute for Dulcolax? I have to take it to prep, but think it might have gluten for the colonoscopy. Oh, so you're talking about a colonoscopy. Well, get this, you got to approve this through your GI doctor. But one of the things I've had in when I've worked with other GI doctors and their patients, is we have them do a colonoscopy prep using a vitamin C flush. It's very effective. Vitamin C is a very effective way to clean out the bowel because of its osmotic effect. So a vitamin C flush, the way it's done is you start, if you're trying to prep for the colonoscopy the next day, then you would do this flush in the evening, and you take 2 teaspoons, which is equivalent to about 6 grams of vitamin C, okay, every 15 minutes until you had diarrhea. And once your bowels start moving, you discontinue the use of taking any more of that vitamin C and let it run its course. But what vitamin C does is it's an osmotic, so it's going to pull water into your bowel and it's going to flush them out. It's a very safe way to go about doing it. But again, I would say if you're planning on doing this, you want to get with your GI doctor and just talk to them about it. But this is one way, and this is a gluten-free alternative to sometimes some of those prep kits do contain gluten, and they're just not really all that healthy for you. And to me, I always question, I've talked to a number of GI doctors, and one of the questions I've asked frequently is, why would you give your patient a colonoscopy prep that actually can irritate their bowel right before you're getting ready to look at it? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Wouldn't it be best to give them something clean and potentially healthy that can also cleanse them out without the potential creation of damage that you might then in turn see and misdiagnose on a colonoscopy? So again, conversation you need to have with that doc. But what you got to be careful about vitamin C preps is a lot of them contain corn, GMO corn. Most vitamin Cs nowadays are made from GMO corn, so you want to be real cautious about that. If you're interested in a powdered form of vitamin C, what I would recommend is a product called Detox C, which is a wild African potato. That's what it's derived from. So it's you're not going to get that corn effect. So if you're so Christy's asking about a right bundle branch blockage in the heart, which is an electrical conduction problem within the heart. Can potassium help with that? Maybe. The proof is proverbial in the pudding. Does potassium play a role in the electrical conductivity of the heart muscle? It sure does, but potassium may or may not be your problem. So really what I would suggest before recommending a lot of potassium is really get with your doctor and have them measure your calcium, your magnesium, your potassium. Those are the primary electrolytes, right? So get a read on what those things are doing, and then if anything's low, then you can supplement accordingly. Let's see. So Nathaniel's saying, hello, doctor. Can you tell me why most potassium supplements have only 99 milligrams? What can you recommend? So there's a reason why. That's because potassium can kill you if you overdose on potassium. Now, So a long time ago, that legally the law was set to limit the amount of potassium per dose to be 99 milligrams. So that's the reasoning behind it. To me, it doesn't make any sense because, like I said earlier, you can get 400 milligrams of potassium from eating a banana. So technically, according to the FDA, a banana actually would be illegal in terms of being a potassium supplement. But anyway, that's just the way it is, man. That's just the way it is. And so you can't buck the system. You can work your way around it. But the best way to get potassium regardless is through food. It's one of the few supplements I would say food is absolutely the best method to get this nutrient. And there's plenty of foods that contain plenty of this nutrient. Where most people go wrong is they eat highly processed diets. And highly processed diets are usually high in sugar, which deplete potassium. And so they also spike insulin and they'll spike your cortisol, which depletes potassium even further, which is one of the reasons why if you just don't eat garbage and you eat real food, you should be able to get enough potassium without having to supplement with it. Let's see here. Do cooked vegetables spike your insulin compared to raw vegetables? I haven't seen anything that's scientific evidence that's compelling enough for me to say cooked vegetables spike your insulin more than raw at all. Vegetables pretty much don't spike your insulin. I mean, there are exceptions. You know, when I say spike, I mean you might get a small lift if you're eating carrot or a higher glycemic type of vegetable, root vegetables predominantly, potatoes, carrots, etc. But will cooked ones do it more than raw? No, I haven't seen any compelling evidence that says that they do. I take NP thyroid. That's a form of thyroid medication. And I read that the side effect is muscle cramps, which I get almost every night. Should the electrolytes help with this? Maybe they will. It depends, though. If NP thyroid is causing your cramps, taking more electrolytes probably won't solve the problem. One of the things that sometimes will happen when doctors put patients on drugs like NP thyroid or Synthroid or Tirosint or any of the other major thyroid medications is if they don't, they should monitor it. I mean, I'd not say that your doctor's not monitoring it, but monitor your TSH. Because what can happen is if your dose of NP thyroid is too high, then your TSH is going to be less than 0.5. And that's a scenario I'll see a lot. I'll see people that'll come in to see me with muscle cramps. And what we'll find is that their prescribing doctor had them on a thyroid medicine, and their TSH levels were like 0.05, 10 times lower than what it should be, right? And so what that was doing is they were being over-medicated with thyroid hormone. And remember that too much thyroid, right? Too much thyroid medicine can increase spasm and muscle pain and cause hair loss. And so just like not enough thyroid can cause cramps, too much can also cause it. And so that's where I would, ask your doctor to check your TSH. If your TSH is super low, you're probably being over-medicated. If your T4 is too high, you might be being over-medicated. So a good thyroid workup is what I would suggest you talk with your doctor about to get to the root of whether or not it's the medicine creating the cramp or whether it's something like an electrolyte or a potassium deficiency or another nutritional deficiency creating the cramp, because it could be a lot of different things, and you don't want to just assume and take a bunch of potassium, because that might not help you. Let's see here. How much fiber is too much? That question is dependent on the individual. As far as fiber is concerned, in average between 25, 35 grams of fiber a day is pretty okay for most people. But some people are FODMAP sensitive. Some individuals have gut problems or have microbiome problems where they don't process fiber very well. And so even going over 10 or 15 grams of fiber a day for that individual might be too much. So it just depends on the individual as to the answer to that question. Does taking a lot of magnesium cancel out potassium absorption? They can compete. But I've never seen a case of somebody supplementing magnesium actually cause a potassium deficiency. So in my experience, that doesn't hold out, or that doesn't hold water. So Lily, hi, Dr. Osborne. Good to hear you and your family are okay. Been following your no grain, no pain diet for 3 years and love it. Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. Question, is amlodipine and or Lexapro, do those deplete electrolytes? Amlodipine, I believe there's some research on amlodipine causing not so much potassium deficit. I actually think it's the opposite. I want to say that particular medicine causes or potentially can cause an elevation in potassium. So if that's something you're taking, I'd look more toward that as opposed to deficiency. Let's see here. As far as the other medication that you mentioned, the SSRI, no, I've not seen anything that shows that SSRIs deplete potassium, although we could say that they can affect the electrolyte balance over time because they overstimulate the nerve. And remember, the nerve ending is controlled by regulation between sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. So there's specialized gated channels in your nerve tissue that open and close, and the more you stimulate your nerve with an SSRI, the more theoretically you could cause depletion of those electrolytes. But I haven't seen anything in the research about that, so I can't make that claim. Let's see here. Joseph says, I went from a keto diet to carnivore and eventually started getting leg pain, fatigue, breathing problems. Now I'm back on keto with leafy greens and cruciferous veg, and the problems went away. Yeah, Joseph, so that's a classic example. Thank you for sharing your story. That's classic of somebody who went too far and started to develop that potassium deficiency. If you're going to do keto and you're going to go carnivore, my advice is really research the nutritional deficiencies around that so that you're not creating the potential for a problem, because any diet to any extreme is going to create the potential for nutritional imbalance. And then there's also what you eat, what you like, what you don't like, etc. So it's always good to measure nutrition. I'd say if there's one thing a person could do preventatively across the board to make their health solid and to maintain great health, it's to monitor nutritional status, because ultimately, remember, the only thing that your body requires, essentially speaking, meaning the group of nutrients that your body requires are called essential nutrients, are your vitamins, your minerals. Those are essential, right? Without them, you die. So monitoring them and maintaining adequate levels of those nutrients is very, very important for overall health. Why most doctors don't recognize that and don't train in it is beyond me, but it's just the way it is. Allison, my labs have shown high potassium, but I cannot get my doctor to address it. My adrenal counselor, however, told me to take half a teaspoon of salt in water daily. It's not going to do anything to your potassium so much. You need to figure out why it's elevated. Allison, if you're on medicines that can cause elevation in your potassium, that would be my first question. Again, if you're taking medicines, some medicines elevate potassium. So if you're coming back chronically high, in my experience, that's typically when people come back chronically high, it's because they're on a drug that's artificially elevating their potassium. So you really got to get that part figured out, because taking salt is not going to fix that problem. Remember, high levels of potassium can put you into arrhythmia. It can be a life-threatening situation. So you don't want to let that slide long term without looking into it. Reason for too much weight gain in pregnancy without eating too much. Any ideas? Yeah, your body's trying to gain weight because that baby needs more caloric intake. There's normal. I mean, depending on some. So there's. If you're gaining more weight than what the doctor's charts or the OB-GYN's chart is saying you should be gaining, and you're rapidly gaining, it could be fluid gain. You might have kind of an underlying gestational diabetes issue. And so looking at your ratio of carbs, fats, and proteins, looking at the quantity of sugar you might be consuming or carbohydrate that you might be consuming could cause that. But specifically, women gain weight during pregnancy. So again, without specifics, it's hard for me to dial in on that too much. Jean's asking, why should I avoid magnesium stearate in supplements? I see it in many. You shouldn't. There was an old mythical article somebody wrote years ago on how magnesium stearate is bad, but it isn't. There's no great research that shows that magnesium stearate creates a problem or creates a soapy film in the gut. It was an ex vivo experiment that you can't take an ex vivo study and apply it to human conditions. So there's a lot of fear mongering around magnesium stearate, and I don't agree with it. I tend to actually very much disagree with it. Magnesium stearate is what's called a flow agent, and so when you're trying to get a level of magnesium into a capsule, and you're trying to get each capsule to be equal to a certain level of magnesium, scientists use flow agents. Nutrition supplement companies use flow agents to make sure that dose is consistent with each capsule and with each pill. And without a flow agent, it's very, very hard to do. So I don't share that same pessimism about magnesium stearate. Can I explain MTHFR and COMT gene mutations? Boy, that's a topic for another night. And yeah, we can get into that certainly another night. I can give you kind of a general synopsis. If you're positive for MTHFR, it doesn't really mean a whole lot unless you're surrounded by a toxic environment. Where people with MTHFR mutations really pay a price is if they're eating poorly or they're being exposed to environmental poisons and don't know it, because you need MTHFR to help your liver and your detoxification pathways, to help your methylation pathways. But just having a mutation without being exposed to major toxins, etc., is generally not something that you have to worry about. I have an MTHFR mutation. I don't take extra folate or methylfolate, and my methylation factors, when I measure them in my blood, are perfectly fine. So don't put so much heavy. A lot of people want to put heavy weight on gene mutations or gene SNPs. You guys may or may not know this about me. 20 years ago, I was one of the first doctors in the world. Actually, I used to lecture on this very topic of SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, and genetic mutations are associated with nutritional issues. And we actually, in my practice, we did a lot of research around this area. I actually helped develop one of the first genetic mutation tests that ever went to market. And we did 5 years of research in this area. And what I found repetitively over and over again is that you can't supplement genes and make people's problems go away. People's problems aren't their genes. Remember this. Always remember this. Your genes are a gift from God. They're a gift. You are graced with your genes. They're not curses. They're not evil. They're not bad. What happens is if you have certain genetic predisposition and you make bad choices that make those genes that maybe don't work as well as somebody else's optimally in that situation or that circumstance, that's when problems can start to set in. But that's not the fault of the gene. That's the fault of the individual's choice. So for example, if you have a COMT gene, okay, I'm going to talk about COMT, that stands for catechol-methyltransferase. It's a gene that helps methylate and create new DNA, new RNA, nucleic acid. So basically helps your body create the building blocks for making new cells, but it also helps you metabolize estrogen. So if you've got a COMT mutation and you're taking heavy doses of estrogen as birth control pills or as postmenopausal for hot flashes, that's probably a bad idea, because if you can't properly methylate your estrogen, then your body can't get rid of that estrogen, and it builds up types of estrogens that are more conducive to creating cancer. But again, it's not the gene that creates that scenario. It's the environmental choice of choosing to take that drug in this scenario. Again, I'm just giving you basic examples here. But don't put too much weight on your genes unless you're in a toxic environment. And step one with that is don't supplement your genes. I've seen this happen time and time again. Doctors try to supplement people's genetics, saying your genes are bad. Your genes aren't bad. Your genes are a gift. You need to make better choices, and you need to identify things in your environment that are creating the strain on your genes. That's really where it's at. So anyway, why is the symbol for potassium a K and not a P? Good question. Because chemists set this up many years ago, and the symbol for potassium is a K, just like the symbol for sodium isn't an S, it's an Na, right? So that's just the nature of the beast. Is Celtic sea salt or Celtic salt rather, good to provide adequate potassium and other important minerals? No, I mean, not by itself, not in and of itself. You really, if you're trying to get your minerals, you need to eat, you can use Celtic salt, and it is a good source of minerals, but it isn't going to provide all the minerals if you just rely on that as a source of minerals. Probably not going to provide everything you need. Let's see, what about a diuretic? Let's see, diuretic for taking testosterone. Does that deplete it too? I'm not sure I understand your question. Scroll up just a little bit on that one. The question doesn't make sense. Sorry, Nicole. Maybe retype it. But a diuretic for taking testosterone. I mean, what you're asking me is if you're taking testosterone, does testosterone deplete your potassium? The simple answer is no, not really. That's not one that we know that really depletes potassium. But the diuretic certainly can. Let's see. So somebody mentioned coffee, and I would say this too. If you're a heavy caffeine user, we didn't really talk about that tonight. Heavy caffeine use can also deplete your potassium. This is why people that are multiple cup drinkers end up with cramps. It's one of the reasons why you can deplete through that diuretic action of coffee. Remember, diuretics can be drugs, but caffeine's a diuretic drug too. So overconsumption of it. I'm not talking about 1 cup a day or a cup of green tea here or there. I'm talking about heavy users of caffeine. So all those energy drinks, multiple cups of coffee, those can definitely through diuretic action deplete your potassium. How many bananas can you eat a day? How many would you like to eat? There's not like a magic number. I would say where you get into trouble with bananas is the sugar content. If you have a banana a day, probably not the end of the road for you, but if you're eating 4 or 5 bananas a day, now you're getting a lot of heavy sugar. So it depends on what else you're also eating that might also have sugars in it. You can overdo any food. Do golden beets have a good amount of potassium? No, golden beets do have a good amount of potassium, and really where beets are richest in potassium is the top. The beet top, that's the greens that come off the top. A lot of people throw that part out, eat the beets, but the beet greens are really rich in potassium. Is psyllium husk an appropriate fiber to take daily to avoid constipation? No, not no. Yes, psyllium husk is a great fiber. I actually have a fiber product, Rita, called Ultra Fiber, and it's perfectly safe to take daily to help get your fiber levels up. And psyllium is grain-free, so there's no grain in psyllium. Psyllium it's plant material, but it isn't from grain at all. Why would a test show high potassium when someone doesn't eat a lot of potassium foods? There could be a number of reasons why you might have high potassium. Remember what I said earlier, there's a big reason why we'll see high potassium in an individual, and doctors aren't addressing it, is I said one of them is that corticosteroids. So you could be taking a corticosteroid, and that can drive up your potassium. But another reason why, this is probably the biggest reason, is this one right here. Because that high stress initially can cause a bump in your potassium over time. The longer it's there, chronic high stress will lead to reductions, but acute stress can create a bump in your potassium. So it just depends on how long your potassium has been high, how long you've been trying to deal with it. But I would generally say most people's high potassium, again, high, is caused as a result of using certain medications that are known to affect the way the kidney balances potassium, okay? Because an important part of what your kidney does is it preserves potassium, or it excretes potassium if you have too much. It's a great regulator of your potassium level. And if you're taking medicines that have to be metabolized through the kidney or that affect the kidney, this is where a lot of times we're going to see individuals start to develop high levels of potassium. Is it ever too late to reverse potassium deficiency? Yeah, there's one scenario, Josie, where it's too late, and that's when you're dead. But outside of that, no, it's not too late. So you're alive and you're kicking because you asked the question, so it's not too late. Okay. So can Detox C be used for the colon cleanse? I think I answered that question earlier. Again, if you're going to use Detox C and try to do a colon cleanse, clear that with your doctor first. I can't give you medical advice here. Don't want to have that perception that I'm telling you all out there to just do a vitamin C cleanse instead of following your doctor's orders, but clear that with your doc. Let's see here. I have a long, Ricky's saying, I have a long history of kidney stones and have had low potassium. I eat most of the high potassium foods and take potassium citrate prescribed by my nephrologist. Is it pointless to take it? Scroll back up. I'm not sure So again, Ricky, if you have a history of low potassium and kidney stones, but eating those foods has corrected your potassium deficiency, then you're solid. I'm not quite sure I understood where your question was going, but if you're taking potassium supplements that have been, or potassium that's been prescribed by your doctor, and you're eating potassium-rich foods, and you're still struggling with low potassium, you really need to get in and figure out why that's happening. You might have kidney disease in a major way that's leading to potassium wasting, and that's something that you're going to want to have investigated. Let's see here. I drink 1 coconut water per day to increase my potassium intake as well as eating the vegetables. Are you a proponent of adding coconut water? Not really. I'm a little biased on that one though too. When you say 1 coconut water a day, what does that look like to you? Is it 8 ounces, 12 ounces, 16 ounces? I've actually seen coconut water is super high in sugar, and I've seen a person overconsume coconut water to the point where they would go to their dentist and their teeth were mottled and their teeth were loaded with cavities because of the sugar content of coconut water. So if you're going to use coconut water as a source of potassium, I would say small quantities, and really you're better off eating the coconut than drinking a bunch of coconut water. You don't want all that concentrated sugar. Okay. So Marilyn, when I was talking earlier about T4, I meant both, not just total T4, but also free T4. You look at your doctor. You should have them measuring both to get a comprehensive evaluation of what your thyroid's doing. So Stacy says, can you talk about red blood cell potassium is low and serum potassium is normal? What this means is that most likely intracellularly, the potassium is not effectively getting into your cells. And there are a number of reasons why that could be the case. And you might have a full-blown electrolyte abnormality where potassium is having a harder time leaching through the membrane of your cells. So that's where I would look at in that scenario. Don't look at potassium in a vacuum. Look at calcium, look at magnesium, look at your sodium levels, look at your B vitamin levels, look at your other mineral levels, and ensure that your nutrition is sound. Because as an example, I sometimes see people with oleic acid deficiency or omega-3 deficiency, and that can make it harder for minerals to penetrate through cell membranes. And so that in and of itself can cause problems of deficiency. And so again, one nutrient in a vacuum is not how you want to analyze your nutritional status. Generally, when you're asking your doctor to look at you nutritionally, it's best to look at you comprehensively and not just looking at one or two here and there. Let's see here, Lisa. I have celiac and recently developed anemia that has me getting dizziness, heart palpitations, and fatigue. I'm taking iron supplements, but it's been, it's been a week and I still am so dizzy. Any suggestions? The best suggestion I can give you is follow up with your prescribing doctor and do a deeper dive. If you just were diagnosed with celiac disease, one of the major problems that you probably are struggling with is severe malnutrition across the board, not just in iron. Although iron is the most common deficiency in those that have a celiac diagnosis, zinc is common, B12 is common, omega-3 fatty acids are common, vitamin D is common, and those things might also be contributing to your problem. B vitamin deficiency is also common, and B vitamin deficiency can also cause anemia. So, get a full spectrum nutritional workup. And those of you, we aired this earlier, but those of you who aren't aware, if you're new to the Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain show, make sure you sign up. We'll put that link up for you, but make sure you sign up for our master class, especially if you've just recently been diagnosed with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity, and you're kind of trying to figure all this out. This is a master class. It's 14 hours long. You'll walk away literally with more knowledge about how to go gluten-free than any doctor can ever afford to spend that time with you in a one-on-one scenario teaching you all those things. And it's free of charge. It's a gift. It's my gift to any of you who go register. So all you have to do is go to glutenfreesociety.org/masterclass and get signed up for that. So let's see, last question here. We'll take one more here. Widmark, I'm sweating profusely now these days and become sensitive to dairy and losing weight. My labs show low testosterone. How to know if hyperthyroidism or fatty liver? So go back up just a little bit. So if you're sweating profusely, that is another one of the causes of potassium deficiency. I just thought I'd mention that since we're talking about potassium tonight. But if you're losing weight, your testosterone is low, I would say there may be a malabsorption issue that you're struggling with. And so what I would ask your doctor to do, if you know your testosterone is low and you're losing weight and they can't figure out why you're losing weight, is they need to rule out gluten sensitivity, because it's one of the most common causes of unexplained weight loss, and it can also cause low testosterone. So that would be something. Now, they can also rule out hyperthyroidism, and so there's some antibodies that can be detected against or not against your thyroid, but antibodies that behave like thyroid hormone. These are called thyroglobulin stimulating antibodies. So you might ask your doctor to measure you for the condition known as Graves' disease, which is also referred to as hyperthyroidism. So thyroid stimulating antibodies or thyroid stimulating immunoglobulins are antibodies that some people produce that behave like thyroid hormones, so it makes them lose weight and it makes them behave as if their thyroid is working too strongly. So that's another test that can be done. As far as ruling out whether or not it's your liver, an ultrasound of your liver, a scan of your liver would be a good thing that might show some damage to your liver. Blood tests, there's a couple different blood tests, ALT, AST, alkaline phosphatase. Our blood test, bilirubin, is a blood test that can help you rule in or out whether or not there's any potential problems going on with your liver. So hopefully all that's helpful for you, and I wish you well. And come back to the show and let us know how it turns out. Okay. We're out of time. So look, thanks for spending your Monday evening with me. It's always a pleasure, and I love teaching, and I hope you love learning. And make sure, if you're not already, subscribe so that we can send you updates. As we're all in this environment of ultra censorship these days, the best way I can stay communicating with you is through my email list. So come over to glutenfreesociety.org and make sure you sign up for our free newsletter. It's the largest gluten-free newsletter in the world, with 250,000 people subscribing. So join our audience. Join us there, where we can ensure that our communication is not defective or not censored, especially if you want to tune in to future shows and future events that we put on, educational events for you. So thanks so much again. I wish you an excellent week. We'll see you next Monday night for another episode of Dr. Osborne's Brain. Take care. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.